Atapu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Huru Nefer. This is Kasank Ma Keparu with another video for you. In this video, I want to talk to you about how I lied about everything and the three truths. But before I get into that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. Don't forget to do that. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or when I upload recorded videos. And if you are not already a member of ours on Patreon, please consider being a supporter. As a supporter, you'll get access to free oracle readings if you are an ASER level supporter. You also get exclusive videos on meditations, how to hypnotize yourself, self-hypnosis to become more confident, have less anxiety, to get rid of bad habits, also to work with divination, learning how to use the oracles, and learning mantras, which are very, very important. The Vedic mantras, also the Qigong mantras. So consider being a supporter on Patreon. You can do so for as little as $1, $5, or $20 a month. It's up to you, and you can cancel at any time. Lastly, we have some free ebooks, and you can just click on the links below. There are a number of different ebooks that you can download and start reading today, which will give you more information on my spiritual teachings. And don't forget to share this video with family and friends so we can free the planet. Actually, to free the planet, all we need to do is vibrationally shift the planet, and that will bring us to a new reality, more conducive reality in alignment with what we want, in alignment with our wishes, and not the ruling elite's wishes. So Hatepu to all the Magi's. I see you are coming into the chat room. So I want to talk to you real quick about the coronavirus. Excuse me, my throat is like very hoarse. So you may have known that it's considered like a pandemic, and it's really spreading. Tom Hanks has come down with it. And I went to the Oracle to do a reading on this, and I got the 55th hexagram, which means abundance. So it means it's going to get worse. But it will be contained because that 55th hexagram changed to the 11th hexagram, prosperity. So we'll just have to weather this storm. And there's an old Chinese saying which goes, may you live in interesting times. And we are living in interesting times. But I know the coronavirus is very scary. And every day you turn on the news, you hear how they're either, well, I think it was like Disneyland has now closed down, and certain events are where there's a large gathering of people are now not happening, such as sporting events and things of that nature. And Trump had announced that he's not allowing, I think it was travel from Europe. So very scary stuff. But what I want you to keep in mind is this. It's very important to know this. And actually, I was actually having this conversation with my mother who's passed away, and I was communicating to her through the inner planes. And I was talking with her, and I was just basically describing to her what it's like now in 2020. She passed away over 10 years ago. So the world was a different place then. I was describing to her what it was like now. And if this sounds strange to you about communicating with the dead, you haven't been listening to my videos, and you don't understand the power that you really have, because yes, you can communicate with the dead. This is not something new. You know, this is done by every culture of antiquity, from the ancient Chinese dynasties to ancient Kemetic kingdoms and over in India. They all knew how to communicate with the deceased. So this is nothing new. In fact, if you go into the Metunet, to the temples in Kemet, Egypt, you will read where the common citizens of Egypt, the Kamau people, we call them Kamau, would write letters to their deceased and ask their deceased for favors. So this is nothing new, okay? Anyway, back to my point. My point being is this. Keep in mind that although it seems that this is a very dangerous thing, very scary, that number one, we will get through it. And number two, you made a pre-life agreement to be here at this particular time to assist the planet. So Ba Tahuti came to you and he read everything to you that would happen and occur in your lifetime. He is known as the scribe, or his other name is Ba or Hermes Trismegistus. So as the scribe, he would read to you everything that was going to occur. And you had to agree that, okay, yes, I think this is, I will do this. I want to come back and experience these things. So the coronavirus, you're just experiencing this. You agree to experience this. And I said this before, when Trump became president, people were upset. And I said, well, you have to understand, you made an agreement to be in this reality. You could have been in another reality, but no, you said you wanted this reality. You may not remember that agreement, but you did make it, or else you wouldn't be here. And another thing we have to keep in mind as a collective, that we can't experience something that we're not on the same vibrational frequency of. So we're calling these experiences into being in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not as an individual, but as a collective. So please keep that in mind. That's very important to understand that. Because I know we want to ask, well, why is all this happening? Why is this going on? Well, it's because it's part of the plan. It's part of the plan of what you're going to experience. There are an infinite number of realities, and you chose this reality to go through and experience. So may you live in interesting times. Okay, so I'm going to make this video short because I have a lot of work to do. And I haven't been making videos lately because we've been working on a film. So we're producing a major film, and it's taken a lot of my time. So I haven't had opportunities to make videos. I've also been consulting on the side, where doing readings for people and you know, doing a lot of things behind the scenes. And it's been challenging trying to balance everything, you know. But remember, no matter what happens, remain at peace, be amen, because that is the state of your original being, is at peace. All right. So speaking about different realities, there's an issue here and there's a problem here. Okay, where I've given you some information and maybe it's not correct. Maybe I misled you. Maybe I lied. Well, let's see. One of you, one of my magis, sent me an email, and it was a very, very profound email. And I have to compliment this individual because he hit upon something very important. And it basically, in the email, he said, Kasonk, I can't buy into what you're saying because of this, that, and the third. And I wrote him back, that is very, very good. A very good argument you're making there. A very good argument. We're going to address this, okay? We're going to address this. And it's something that's been lingering out there. And we have to deal with it, you know? So let me start by saying this. When I'm giving you information, it is the information that we have access to that has been imparted to me by the ancestors and imparted to me by sages. I am in no way saying that it's the gospel, that it's the truth. It's the absolute truth and there's no other truth. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, based on what we're getting at this particular moment, this is how things work. This is how this reality works. These are the laws, and we must abide by those rules and practice a spiritual way of life that conforms to those rules. And one of the reasons why I left priesthood is because I thought that what they were teaching was antiquated, that it didn't really have an understanding of reality itself. And that's what I was seeking. How does reality work? What is reality? Do we even understand that? And this is something that the great sages of antiquity were trying to figure out. Are we in the matrix? If so, who controls the matrix? Who's behind the matrix? Lots of good questions. But anyway, going back to this individual who wrote me an email. So I wrote him back, and I didn't really get into a counter argument, because I didn't want to do a counter argument, because his point was so valid that I said, you know what, I'm just going to address it in the video. And it's not the fact that he brought this point up. I brought that point up too, to many scholars, and said, there's an issue here. We need to look at this and address this. And the issue is this. The accepted idea that's out there now is that we live in one of an infinite number of parallel realities. And at any time, you can shift to a different parallel reality, one that is to your liking. And if you're looking to have a life of abundance, you already have it. You just have to vibrationally shift to where that ultimate version of yourself exists, so you can interact with it. So we know that God created everything that there is, and that means that it's abundance. You can either add to it or subtract from it. So we know essentially it's all that there is. And we know that you cannot imagine non-existence. So within existence, there's no room for non-existence. So whatever you imagine in some shape or form exists. We know that. But here's where it gets sketchy at. And this is where modern scientists in quantum mechanics have played a little trick on us. You see, this started out in the study of quantum particles and the double slit experiment. I'm not going to go into what that's all about, but what they concluded is that particles can exist in more than one place at the same time. With that idea sprang forth the multiverse theory. Now, not exactly from that. I'm taking a big leap. Where this multiverse theory came from, and the idea that you can shift to a parallel reality, was a little trick science played on everyone. And they played this trick very well. And that you had the New Age movement, the spiritual community, buying into it and saying, yes, we live in one of an infinite number of parallel realities. And there's a number of versions of you that are out there. There's an infinite number of versions of you out there. But they failed to address the little trick that science pulled on us. And I brought this up in my ebook, The New Capital Ankh. And I said, they're going to have to deal and contend with this issue, and they're not dealing with it. So science had a problem with this old theory of the Big Bang, because the Big Bang, from it came planets, solar systems, the foundation of reality itself. We don't know what caused the Big Bang, and science doesn't even want to get into that whole idea of what was before the Big Bang. But the one thing that we do know, when you break it down to the numbers, and even they had the problem with this. Mathematically, it is impossible, near impossible, for that one Big Bang to be the impetus for intelligent life. When you look at what came after that Big Bang, the solar system's life, and if you look at the fact that we, the planet Earth or Gaia, is in the Goldilocks zone, and the Goldilocks zone means it's in a right position, not too far from the sun, not too close to the sun where we fry, to give birth to life. The mathematical probability of a Big Bang happening, where from that Big Bang spring forth life, is improbable. It's almost mathematically impossible for that to happen. Okay? And they knew that. So what did they do? They said, oh, well, if this did happen, and we're here to prove that it did happen. What Christians did at that point was jump on this, and they said, this is an argument for intelligent design, meaning the idea of God, that it had to be an intelligence that arranged the particles and everything to spring forth carbon-based life forms, because mathematically it was impossible for that to happen. And science knew it was impossible for it to happen. So Christians said, yes, this means that there is a God, because there is only an intelligence that could have arranged those subatomic particles to spring forth carbon-based life. That's the only way it could happen. And the scientists knew that they were correct, but science does not want to subscribe to the idea of a supreme being. So what science did was this. They said, yes, one big bang is mathematically impossible to give life in what we see of it today, intelligent life. But what if there was not just one big bang, but 2 or 3, or an infinite number of big bangs? If there were an infinite number of big bangs to infinity, then the probability of one of those big bangs springing forth life now becomes plausible. And from that, science gave birth to the multiverse theory, because they wanted to get away from the idea of an intelligent design of a God. So instead of them addressing that, they kind of went around it, and they came up with this. So that's what I want you to understand. And this was the person who emailed me. That was his thing. He was saying, well, I don't really subscribe to the idea of a multiverse because that negates the idea that there's a God. And I said, you know what? I can't argue with you. I totally understand the argument you're making. And we have to address that. But let's go further down the rabbit hole, because now it gets a little bit more complicated, a lot more complicated, okay? There's another theory that science came up with that is plausible, and it just might be the answer to the reality that we're living in. And what they have surmised is that we live in what we call a simulation. Now let's forget about the multiverse. Now they're saying that we believe with almost certainty that we exist in a simulation. So what is a simulation? It's like a video game, like Sims. A higher intelligent life, aliens, whatever you want to call them, decided to create a 3D holographic experience and create avatars to live in this universe. And this universe or video game or hologram would have a life of its own. And the individuals living in there would go about their business, never knowing that there was a higher form of intelligence out there that actually created them as a simulation. Now, why did they create this universe or us? Maybe because they wanted to see where the future would go, or maybe they wanted to see their own past. So they created this simulation, which was replicated their past. Or maybe they wanted to put different scenarios in places, like, let's see what happened if we created this simulation and they created the bomb, the nuclear bomb or whatever. Let's see if they would destroy themselves. Let's run that simulation and see what happens. And then they could create another simulation where aliens come and take over the planet and see how we react to that. That could be another simulation. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. We're talking about layers upon layers upon layers. You go deep, 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 deep. We're going to get to, science says, we're going to get to the level of where we will be able to create simulations on our own. We will be able to create many universes where we can have artificial intelligence or AI life forms in that universe live they give birth, they live, and they die. We are going to get to that point where we can create that type of simulation. And we can observe it. And those artificial intelligence life forms in that universe will never be aware that we created them. And then we here aren't aware of the fact that, or we now know that it's a possibility that something higher evolved than us created us. And so you go down deep, 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 deep layers. It gets deeper and deeper because those AIs in that universe that we created will create their own universe and duplicate it and duplicate it. It will go on and on and on and on and on. Now, science says there's a problem with that because it's going to get to a point where there are so many different scenarios created in so many different layers that it's going to absorb too much power from the master control unit or whatever's powering these realities, or these scenarios. So that's something to think about. And when they started to really dive deep into this, what they saw is they saw the basis of our lives are numbers, like binary numbers. In fact, more specifically, code. How interesting. How interesting that they are now decoding the very fabric of our reality to be nothing more than code, just like computer code. And it's interesting that if this higher form of intelligence created us, now we're going to create our own AIs, our own scenarios. Very interesting. Now, this brings us to the third idea here that we need to address. So put aside the multiverse, put aside the simulation, and now I'm going to introduce you to something very different than that. And this is something that comes directly from the occultist, where they were pondering the answers to life and wondering what reality was all about. There is the theory that there are no rules, that you are in a matrix, a holographic experience that responds to your thought process. Whatever it is that you harbor as your most dominant thought process becomes the reality. If you say, I believe reality is a multiverse, then this matrix creates it as a multiverse. But if you say, I believe this reality is a simulation, then the matrix creates it as a simulation. Whatever it is you believe, it creates. There is no one truth. And this is something that I long since thought about. And I said, I can buy into that. I can see where that's coming from. Simply because when you look at things like deja vu, or well, let me not go there. Let me not go there. But we all know that certain things change in our reality. There are glitches in our reality, which to me is an indication that reality is what you believe it to be, that it's a very subjective experience, that the reality that I'm experiencing is not the same reality that you're experiencing because we have different belief systems. And that when you hold that thought in your mind, then the infinite number of possibilities collapses into one possibility. But then that takes us back to number one, which is the multiverse, kind of like that in a way. But the difference between this and this third option is that there is no one truth. When we come to an agreement upon what truth is, then that's what it is. When we come to an agreement of what experiences we want to have, then we'll have that experience. I've always said this with the historians and archaeologists: if you start to dig deep enough, you will uncover whatever it is you expect to find. Isn't that interesting? That it's only responding to your expectations. That's what reality is. So there you have the three, call them truths or ideas of what reality is or what we are experiencing. The idea is, well, which one is it? Well, if you've been following me and you know anything about what I teach, then I go to the oracles and I ask God, all right, which one is this, God? Talk to me. Where are we at with these three? Which one is the real deal of what we're experiencing? And I did do that. I went and I asked God, I said, God, do we live in a multiverse? God, do we live in a simulation? God, do we live in a world where there are no rules? Where we have a pure subjective experience? And God spoke to me and got back to me. And I was a bit surprised at his answer or her answer. I'm like, wow, that was unexpected. Because I had a firm idea of what I thought it was. And now the oracles tell me, nah, Kassan, nah, that's not it. So I'm like, okay, do I now go back to the drawing board? What do I do with this? And I'm not going to reveal what the oracle said because I want you, Magi's, to go out there and do your own readings and come back to me and tell me what the oracle told you. And we can compare notes. Because one thing you know about me when I talk about my teachings, never believe anything I say, do an oracle reading on it. Because God is the final word on everything. So when that young man wrote me an email, he said, I don't think I can get with the idea of the infinite number of parallel realities. And I was like, I understand your argument, and your argument is sound. Let's now do an oracle reading and find out what it is, what the truth is here. So, like I said, I encourage you all to do that. The answer may surprise you. It may change your perspective on things. Okay? Clifton, Hetepu, Dozier, Hetep, Robin, Namaste, fresher than your mess, Hetep. Fresher than your mess, Hetep. Let's say Miranda, Namaste. So I want to thank you, Magi's, for tuning in. And as I said before, the coronavirus will get through that. Okay? Be at peace, be at men. Know that it's an experience that you agreed to have. You agreed to be here in this particular time, in this particular reality, okay, to experience these things. And you are gaining from this knowledge, and the knowledge will be uploaded to the Oversoul and stored in the Akashic records for future generations and spirits to access. This is Kasank Ma Keparu, son of Ma and Tuti. Ma'at is a beautiful goddess Hedaru. Until my next video, I'm in Ra.